Roman Katoshu Dai 67足ホットミリオホット主に曰くもっと深く眼学に隠れて隠遁して時は水が三頭を干す清涼老人に未了の公安あるを一貫せん入れきたって奉還がために了確せん時にそうあり入れてといかなるかこれ未了の公安とすなわちだって曰くそうね了せざれば災い自尊に及ぶEntangling Vines, Case 67. Shoryo is not finished. Shoryo Taikin said to the assembly, At first I intended to pass my time, secluded deep in the mountains. But, troubled by the unfinished koan of old man Seiryo, I emerged and am now completing it for him. At this time, a monk came forward and asked, What is this unfinished koan? Taikin struck the monk and said, What the ancestors failed to finish brings misfortune to their descendants. Good afternoon. Here we are again inside. Wouldn't it be nice to be just outside? Listening to the birds, feeling the sunshine, and noticing that very, very faint spray of reddish all over the mountainside. Just the last day or so, the buds are coming out and showing us this wonderful color. It's like a promissory note. Spring will come, summer will come. A wonderful thing to experience here. And of course, today I have the task that is impossible because it's really hard to follow the show that the sun and the moon put on yesterday. And I hope you kept your glasses. You will need them again on August 12th, 2045. It's a bit, but it will happen again. Several wonderful teachings were given yesterday by that celestial happening, event. Event is such a wonderful thing to elaborate on in this context because we need to learn, and we are in the process of learning, and many of us have learned already to look at this world as it unfolds right now as an event. And all of us, we got the ticket when we were born to be part of this event. Everybody is on staff. Event as unfolding rather than us moving around in time and space and some kind of set up universe that is static. Speaking from the point of view of a Zen practitioner, we are sitting here in the Dharma hall and no other place exists. There's no Zendo. But I know it's behind that wall. This is exactly that kind of thinking that brings us into this sun-moon kind of state. Sun and moon can be used very clearly to illustrate how duality works, but also illustrate what kind of different ways we have in this practice of Buddhism, of spirituality, of clarifying this matter. And there are two kinds, not only of knowledge, but also of wisdom. One type of wisdom is called lunar wisdom. When we sit at night, and you know the moon is often used as a metaphor for awakening. The poet, the Zen monk, the Zen nun, the fisherman, the layman Pang's daughter, they are out at night and the moon. Full moon, Zengetsu, awakening. Now that we live in modern times, we know that the moon does not shine. We see it at night, but just because we are on the dark side of the globe. And in this duality, since we are all self-referential, we say, oh, it's night. But the moon is shining. Yet the moon at that time demonstrates to us that, well, there is light out there. The sun is still beaming, shining in this universe. It's just that we sit on the opposite side of a big ball of molten rock that has a very thin skin on the top and flies through this universe at incredible speeds. But we say it's dark and the moon shines. That wisdom that is like the moon is wisdom that we can acquire by study, by reading. And it is shining, but there is something that is illuminating it. Solar wisdom, or solar knowledge, is a knowledge that shines out of itself. And what comes with it is, in order for it to shine, the sun burns it up, itself up, completely. No better picture for real compassion, for real selflessness. There, the sun consumes itself in a way. And it doesn't consume itself in the way that we as human beings started to harness the power that lies in the atoms by splitting it, not by splitting it. The sun actually takes two things and puts them together to something new. The uniting, the bringing together, more and more, becoming one, and ultimately zero. And yesterday was a very powerful demonstration of how sun, this shining wisdom, this shining energy of life, universal life, endless dimensions, how it is undescribably powerful. Even at the darkest point, only there was 5%, but it was still pretty light out there. Not only was it light out there, if you observed the shadow of your hand, it was still in the same clarity, the shadow that was cast. And sometimes, since tomorrow we have Master Rinzai, often people think Rinzai is all about shouting and hitting and all that kind of stuff. We have to also appreciate that in this universe, in this galaxy, there is nothing more powerful than the sunlight, which in absolute silence just makes all of this possible. In absolute silence. Human beings often think, yes, I want to sound powerful, so let's make some noise. Special post-market mufflers. Why do they call it a muffler if it makes it louder to begin with? Just to say, I'm here. Yeah. It's the appearance of power or trying to assume power. The sun doesn't have to do any of that. It's just this up there in absolute silence. So I appreciated that yesterday, and I appreciated you all, inside, outside, wherever you were, participating and allowing us to take this non-verbal Teisho and instruction from the sky, from the earth. And as it is, of course, the human condition is there always, even with these wonderful metaphors of sun, moon, solar wisdom, and lunar wisdom. Then you get back to the Zendo and there are ticks. You have this wonderful experience and then you look down and there's this bloodsucker that bears the promise of feasting on you, which would be fine if they wouldn't come with all kinds of diseases that are not helpful. Sometimes thoughts are like these ticks. They come and we give them enough time to attach to us. Not only will they suck our blood, they will blow up, and then if they let go, it's too late. The infection is there, and it might play havoc with our systems. I don't know if currently we have anybody here who has already been infected with Lyme disease, but this mountain monastery has many people who come here or who have lived here who suffer from these exposures. So please be careful. This is not something you want to acquire. All right. Let's go on to the koan. Today we are meeting Shoryo Taikin. Shoryo Taikin. Not much is known about Shoryo Taikin. We know he died in 974, and he only appears in this one case in the Shumon Kattoshu. He was a native of Weifu in the present Hebei province. His teacher was Hogen Bunneki. He became a Dharma descendant of Hogen and then lived at this mountain by the name of Shoryo, Shoryo-san. And although we have not much left about him, he received the posthumous title of the great Zen master Dharma lamp, Hoto Daishi. Hoto Daishi. So there he is, speaking to the assembly, saying, at first I intended to pass my time secluded deep in the mountains. But troubled by the unfinished koan of old man Seiryo, I emerged and am now completing it for him. The poor guy. Huh? That sounds like his teacher was a sucker. He left unfinished business that his Dharma descendant had to finish, instead of just coming and living in a place like this, secluded deep in the mountains, alone, staying out of the path of other beings. So who is this old man, Shoryo? He refers to him as Shoryo Rojin, 4 characters. When you look at the characters, it's quite funny, because Shoryo, it's the same Shoryo as in Shoryo Inryo Sui. One person is laughing, because that's the Japanese word for soda, for soft drink. Well, Shoryo means refreshing. The refreshing old man. That's what he called his teacher. So maybe he is not that mad at him. This refreshing old man. So let's look then a little bit at this Hogen Buneki. What did he teach? How did he teach Shoryo? Here's one story. There are different stories about how Hogen Buneki awoke, what gave him an occasion to awaken. And it could be that he had more than one awakening. Luckily, we all wake up every morning, earlier or later, but still we awake. So when Hogen, that's a different, let's see how he actually woke up. He went to go and study with Rakan Keijin. And he stayed at the temple during that pilgrimage, and it was in the winter. So when he arrived there, this Rakan or Keijin asked him, "Where are you going?" Hogen replied, "On an ongoing pilgrimage." Keijin said, "Why do you go on pilgrimage?" Hogen replied, "I don't know." Keijin said, "Not knowing is most intimate." At these words, Hogen experienced an awakening. Not knowing is most intimate. And that knowing and not knowing is also exemplified in the second tale about Hogen Buneki's awakening. So they stayed at the temple for some time, and there was a big snowstorm, and after the snowstorm, these pilgrims were going to leave. We had a big snowstorm here, and we find that it is also a wonderful image for this work of Zen practice. Snow everywhere, in the driveway, outside of the monastery. And there's snow, so what will happen? One poor person in some kind of an officer role will be sent out and clear the parking lot. And that person will just shovel it. And the next day at 12 o'clock when the sun comes out, it's all gone. Already the first hint for unfinished business. Unfinished business. So, but here when the snow was gone, 3 monks, including this Hogen Buneki, said farewell farewell and started to depart this temple where we had Rakan Keijin. Keijin accompanied them to the gate and asked, I have heard you say several times, because these monks are always discussing stuff. Several times I heard you say that the three realms are only mind, and the myriad dharmas are only consciousness. So there are teachings in Buddhism that there's the mind school. It's all mind. All the dharmas just exist in your mind. The master then pointed to a big rock that was lying right there on the ground next to the gate and said, so, do you say this rock is inside or outside of your mind? Hogen said, inside. Definitely, inside. Rakan said, how can you, as a pilgrim, carry such a rock in your mind while you go on pilgrimage? Dumbfounded, Hogen Buneki. His jaw just dropped. He couldn't say anything. He put his luggage down at the master's feet and asked him to clarify what real truth is. And each day for the next month or so, he spoke with the master, going into the room, as it says, shitsunai, into the room, into doksan, and they had these interactions. And the master would always say, to whatever Hogen Buneki demonstrated or said, would say, the Buddha Dharma is not like that. Ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. And it went on and on and on. And poor Hogen Buneki finally came in and said, I'm going to leave. I've run out of anything to say and of all ideas. And Rakan said, if you want to talk about Buddha Dharma, everything you see embodies it. At these words, Hogen Buneki once again experienced this awakening. So, coming here to a practice like this, in order to come to the point where one runs out of ideas and runs out of words, is an arduous process. I remember in my practice being quite frustrated with, so many thoughts, and they keep coming and coming and coming. And Joshu Roshi said that, look at it like this. You have this big barrel of thought, and there's only a tiny, tiny hole on the bottom. And they come out one by one. But in order to empty that barrel, we have to just let it happen. We can't make the hole larger. They don't evaporate. So when the thoughts come, let them come. And not only let them come, let them go. Let them go. It's a wonderful way of spending the time on the cushion. It's like the Chinese water torture. Oh, now I'm not thinking. This is the way how Hogen Bunneki taught. Here's another way that he taught that I want you to hear about. There's the story that in olden times, a Zen practitioner lived alone in a hermitage. It was just a cottage, like the cottage that Taito Kokshi talks about. Very simple, just thatched with one bundle of straw, not even having a working pot inside. It's a broken-legged pot. And this monk or this nun or this practitioner lived there alone, devoting their time to this investigation and to remind themselves. They wrote out over the door to this cottage the word mind, like shin, kokoro. Above the only window in the hut, they wrote another sign saying, mind. And on the wall, a big calligraphy saying, mind. Zen Master Hogen Bunneki said, that's no good. What he should have done, what she should have done, what they should have done is, above the door, there should have been a sign saying, door. Above the window, there should have been a sign saying, window. And on the wall, there should have been a sign saying, wall. This is how he taught. Very concrete. No artifice to it. Call a spade, call a wall, call a window, and a door, a door. One day he said to his students and said, students of Zen need only act according to conditions to realize the way. What does it mean, according to conditions? Everything that is unfolding at this very moment unfolds conditionally. There are many theories about it. One of the best known, of course, is Pratitya Samutpada, dependent origination. Engi in Japanese. But that's just a theory. Still, everything is unfolding conditionally. Students of Zen need only act according to conditions to realize the way. When it's cold, they're cold. When it's hot, they are hot. If you must understand the meaning of Buddha nature, then just pay attention to what's going on. There is no shortage of old and new expedients. Haven't you heard about this and this and Master, who upon reading somebody else's scripture exclaimed, understanding that all things are the self. This is what all the ancient holy ones realized. The holy ones did not have a self, nor was there anything that was not their selves. In another text, that sage said, the mind of the great sage of India, That's how it starts. And according to this, there is no need to go beyond this opening phrase. Within this phrase is what is always put forth as the teaching of this school. All you should understand that the myriad beings are your own self, and that across the great earth there isn't a single dharma that can be observed. Shito also admonished, don't pass your days and nights in vain. What I've just said may be realized if you seize the opportunity right before you. If you miss the opportunity, then that is called passing your days and nights in vain. If you spend your time trying to understand form in the middle of no form, just going on in this way, you are missing the opportunity. So, do we therefore say that we should realize non-form in the midst of form? Is that right? If your understanding is like this, then you are nowhere near it. You're just going along with the illness of the two-headed madness. Of what use is that? All of you, just do what is appropriate to the moment. This is a very, very clear instruction of what to do in this formalized context. When we get up, what do we do? Get up. When we eat, eat. When you relieve yourself, and funnily, that's one of the easier things, just do that. When you think, really think. And something is to be said about thinking too. Thoughts are not our enemies. If we engage with thinking in an adversarial fashion, there is no end to it. By now we should know that warfare doesn't bring any good to anybody in this world or even inside, or especially inside ourselves. Thinking has its place. And it's not as compartmentalized or as limited as we might believe at times. We have to remember that meditation practice has several aspects. Of course, Zazen in the beginning, or always, has this aspect of honing our ability to focus. To focus in two ways. To focus on this single-minded application. The single-minded application to being present, or at some point in the beginning, as we heard, there are so many ways, expedient means to do it. Concentrating on the breath and being completely in that movement with our breathing. Single-mindedly boring into mu, boring into who am I? Or what is this? Or we develop this opening 360-degree awareness of focus that is multi-dimensional. When we sit and we open up without any specific focus on a pinpoint, our focus becomes so wide that inside and outside disappear, and the same amount of space exists in front of our eyes as there is behind them, inside our ears as is there outside, inside this bag of skin, the same amount of unlimited space, and it itself losing itself to that open focus that allows us to experience the birds singing in this single universe that is not cut into inside and outside. The airplane flying straight through us. So that is one aspect of this meditation. But thinking comes up, and we have thinking powers. We have thinking powers, and so we should put them to good use, especially if we can't stop thinking. So there are two more aspects to this sitting practice. One is a constructive aspect. We are sitting here and read together the Diamond Sutra. Besides having the aspect here of, again, single-minded application. When we chant Nyoze Gamon Nichi Ji Sokurai, that is single-minded application. That is that first phase of, or first flavor of our Zazen. But then when the world are not one appears, and Subhuti, and they start speaking to us in a language that we understand, another aspect comes up, and that is that constructive aspect. Teaching, the teaching of the Buddha, the teaching of the ancestors, the teaching that is an expression of the lives and experience of those who have preceded us, are instructions that allow us in a constructive thinking process to build approaches and habits that allow us to live more wholesome. Simultaneously, we also can engage in this deconstructive process of becoming aware of our shortcomings, of our habits that are not wholesome, and start in a constructive way to deconstruct them. Very different than fighting with thoughts. When we realize something, well, I know often the Soshi portion of the Rinzai Zen tradition, which is the action, the immediacy, likes to poo-poo psychology. But psychology can be very helpful. If yourself that is arising in the realm of psychology and psychological pain arises, it's a very good place to employ these methods that help us to relate to it in a different way, especially when it is informed from, now here comes the sun that shines on that, from that wholesome wisdom of solar experience of being in this very unfolding moment. So when we sit and our thoughts come, let's engage them in that way. Let's realize on that level of our human activity what it is that we repeat over and over, what we can do about it, to not repeat it, or to change it to an unfolding that then becomes fresh, even if it appears to be the same happening. It's quite important. Thoughts are not enemies to fight. And that way, actually, they will be much easier to retire. Much easier. Because when there's war, we'll always be on the guard. Our body will always be on the guard for the next assault. At peace, anshin, heart, mind, at peace. Back to the koan. So poor Shoryo Taikin could not pass his time secluded deep in the mountains. What was troubling him was the unfinished koan of his teacher, Hogen Buneki, of whom we got a flavor a little bit through these stories that I recounted. But now he says, I emerged and I'm now completing it for him. The monk came forward and asked, what is this unfinished koan? Taikin struck the monk and said, what the ancestors failed to finish brings misfortune to the descendants. Let me give you an alternate translation. Same thing. Once the master presided over the Dharma hall and declared, my original intent was to live in the mountains and hide my light, recuperate from my illness as I passed the time. I was going to just retreat and lock myself up and recuperate from my illness. What is his illness? The illness of these hindrances that we carry in ourselves. That then and one of those hindrances might just be saying to me, go to the mountains, be alone, stay out of that light. That's what he intended. However, my teacher had some unfinished business. And so I have come out to finish it on his behalf. At this time, a monk asked him, what was your teacher's unfinished business? The master hit him. He said, and here this is another translation from the Chinese, because the life pulse of the ancestors has not been cut off, it entails a lot of trouble for their sons and grandsons. Because the life pulse of the ancestors has not been cut off. Wouldn't it be nice to sit here and to have the ability to say, my teacher, my parents, our ancestors did just the perfect thing and didn't leave us with any kind of smelly residue. But unfortunately, that's not the case. What would happen if that life pulse of the ancestors would be cut off? No more children. Just one more generation. Everything will continue, but the human race, the human species would end. Because that life pulse is our humanity. And it is actually wonderful that it has not been cut off. This points to our investigation and our realization and actualization to make our incompleteness perfectly incomplete. To live within this incompleteness in the most complete way that we can. It goes on here. It entails a lot of trouble to their sons, grandsons, daughters, granddaughters, children, because we go through the same thing again. And our job is then to just reduce the amount of traces and stains and missteps that we leave as traces in this world, in each other's lives. In this translation, it goes on. The monk is not satisfied. He continues asking, where does the mistake lie? The master answered, the mistake lies in my getting you involved in this trouble. It's time to test the generator every Tuesday. So please accept my apologies for being involved in this here with you. But you are all already utterly corrupted in the most wonderful way. That's where the mistake lies. When the local king heard about this, he also asked the master, what was the unfinished business of your teacher? The master replied, I am right now in the process of clarifying the issue. Another monk asked, what is the secret meaning that came from the West? What an a-hole, right? The master answered, suffering. You ask a question like that, you get an answer like that. What is the great intent of Buddha Dharma? Asked the monk. The master retorted, first, ask about the small intent. Then the great intent will show itself. This koan that the teacher has not finished is the koan that we all carry. It's the koan of our lives, of being alive as a human being, of having to sort out where and how to hedge our bets. Shall I just continue to dwell in this known and therefore somewhat comforting place of discomfort? Or should I enter some fresh discomfort that comes with fear and not knowing if it will get worse or if it will get better? And of course, if we think like that and act like that, it's definitely going to be worse. Or how do we attend to this koan? Yes, there's talk therapy. We can go and talk about it, which might help in the clarification of some of the matters, but which will not take care of the sitting down with ourselves and clarifying it down to the root of the plum tree that we just encountered a couple of days ago. And it's not going down to a place where you will find a book with explanations or a very clear and distinct formulation and key to unlock all that Gordian knot that we have tied ourselves up in over so many years. It is more intuition than intellection. A clarification of that eye seeing organ of intuition. Hogen Buneki was asked by one of the students, what is in the way of our Dharma eye to see clearly? How did Hogen Buneki answer? The eye. E-Y-E. The eye is in the way. So let's continue to manifest ourselves according to the conditions that emerge right here in front of us, sunshine or not, cloudy or not. We could see the sun yesterday darkening with the moon in front of it through the clouds in a way that we would not be able to see it otherwise. Delusion has its place. Fogginess has its place and its origin in this very process of clarification. And altogether, it is quite awesome. The koan does not have an answer, but this very first place, not the secondary, not the about. This is even too much. Sometimes we have to speak about it. There are places and times to speak about it. Sometimes in Doksan, you are wordlessly, but fully manifesting yourselves. Other times, you will be asked to say something. Remember the two books of Dainin Katagiri? The first book, his talks were collected and it had the title, Returning to Silence. It probably didn't have a great effect because he had to write a second book by the title, You Have to Say Something. And we have to say something in this world. In this world, at times, we have to say something. This is case 67. The unfinished business continues. The unfinished business is a business that is extremely interesting, rich, fresh, and only to experience while we are here, while we have eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So let's not look down at our humanity, our being stuck in this bag of skin in any diminishing way. Let's develop that freedom within. When we realize that there is no inside and outside, soon enough the sun will not shine from the outside. Soon enough the sun will not shine from the inside. Soon enough it will just be